it's a magical kingdom in a mixed up world. You're in the sweet spot, baby. You're in the sweet spot, girl. You're in the sweet spot, darling. It's a magical kingdom in a mixed up world. You're in the sweet spot, baby. You're in the sweet spot, girl. You're in the sweet spot, darling. It's a magical kingdom in a mixed up world. It's a magical kingdom in a mixed up world. It's a magical kingdom in a mixed up world.
Welcome to the Sweet Spot. My name is Lynn, and Ken is my co-host. How's it going, Ken?
Lynn, it is going. I am looking forward to this episode. I'm so happy to be here, and yeah, thank you. What is all this anyway?
Well, Ken, we are the #1 Disneyland podcast that's hosted by two former Disneyland Custodial cast members.
#1. All right.
And also, this is episode 314.
314.
Yeah, I know.
That's amazing. We should celebrate. We should celebrate. We should have a bunch of people on the show with us today.
That's right. We should do a show to celebrate. And also, Ken and I are authors of two books with the same title, Cleaning the Kingdom, two different subtitles, two different books, two separate books, separate content. And you can get those books at Amazon. We are sold out of the first book on our website that were autographed by both of us, but we still have a couple for the second book that are autographed. More are coming on the way, signed ones. But if you don't want the signed ones and you don't want to wait, you can go to Amazon and get both copies there. And also you can get the first book on audio and both books on Kindle or wherever digital books are found. Also, Ken, we have a Patreon where we do a bonus show once a month, and we have two levels of the show. We do one like a regular show, and then we have a extended version where we do kind of a custodial tie-in to that discussion or bonus for that episode. And if you'd like to help support the show and keep it going, it's really important because expenses just keep going up, and the more shows we do, the more money, and also the more money that we can, get, we can do more with the show. Maybe we could get Ken and I both at Disneyland sometime to do some recordings. So stuff like that, some fun things. So we're and we do have some fun things, speaking of. So anyway, so the Patreon, but I do want to talk about that, is the Patreon. You can go to patreon.com, search The Sweet Spot, or go to our website, thesweetspot.com, and you can sign up for our Patreon. There's two levels, $7.49 and $5, so, or more. Speaking of fun things, we have two events where we are going to both be there. And the first one is the Disneyana event that they've been doing for years now, and they've had it at local hotels of the area and
near Disneyland.
Disneyland, yeah. And I was trying to find out where that one was, but anyway, so we're doing it on September 12th, and that's a Sunday, and it's open to the public from 10 to, I believe, 5. And if you're a member of the Disney fan club, Disneyana, which you can go to their website, just search like Disneyana fan club or whatever, and you can sign up, and you can get in at 9 o'clock, I believe. But I think it's pretty cheap to get in. It's like $5 or $10. They have all the info there on their website, and we will have links to all that. But we'll be there, selling our books, and we'd love for you to come by and say hi. Even if you have our books already, that'd be.
We will do customized autographs to you.
That's right.
If you come in and either bring a copy you already have or buy there.
Right. Yeah. And I'm printing up some buttons, so we'll have some special buttons that we haven't printed out before. So these are new, exclusive just for this event and the next event that I'm going to speak about, and that is that we are taking it to another state. We are going to Nevada, Las Vegas, and we're going to be at Unicon, which is a kind of like a Comic-Con variety convention. Um, Not just comics, but it's kind of, what would you call it, Ken? Just like a
Well, it's different forms of entertainment. You know,
right.
you do have comics, you do have sci-fi, actors, and I think writers and directors as well. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a very diverse group of people. There's pro wrestlers. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's just
Sports.
they're
Yeah.
trying to get a bunch of different fandoms together.
Right. So if you're a fan of like, DC, Marvel, Star Wars, Disney, even more, they will probably have some sort of showing there. But we will be there, and that's October 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. That's a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And I don't know the times on all that yet. It's still something that we are still working on as far as getting all the details. But I wanted to throw it out there so you're aware of it. If you wanted to make plans to either go, or if you're local to the Las Vegas area, we would love to see you there. And just kind of throwing it out there, we are possibly, it will be official by the next time we do the show, but we're possibly going to be doing a panel there where you can see us speak live, and we're going to do a little presentation. So we're really looking forward to that, and hope to see as many people as we can there. So if you're from Southern California, take a little trip to Vegas and go on up and check out the show and say hi to us. We'd appreciate it. I think that covers everything, Ken. But tonight we have an exciting show, right?
Yeah, what's with the main topic on the show this evening?
I don't know. No, just kidding. No, we are going to have some former cast members on that were part of the opening crew for Splash Mountain.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, okay. Well, longtime listeners know that I have absolutely no excitement whatsoever for Splash Mountain.
None. Yeah.
This is going to be great, Lynn. This is so cool. This is going to be one of my favorite episodes of all time.
I know. I'm really looking forward to it, and I can tell you're excited. So we better hurry up and get going so we can get to that discussion. Now we're going to have the current events. Ken, what do you have?
Well, Lynn, there's stuff going on. I mean, Disneyland just celebrated its 66th anniversary,
Yeah.
and they announced a third park would open as a result. No, they didn't do that. But the Jungle Cruise officially reopened, and Bernie McDonald had a story in the Orange County Register that headlined "Disneyland seamlessly blends in new Jungle Cruise scenes while a racing ride's troubled past." WDI has done a masterful job of seamlessly integrating playful new scenes into the Jungle Cruise while stripping the boat ride of racist tropes, just as Disney prepares to launch a new film franchise based on the opening day Disneyland attraction. The Jungle Cruise attraction officially reopened on Friday, July 16th after undergoing a major makeover to remove outdated cultural depictions and add a woman of color at the center of the revamped backstory of the attraction. The Disneyland boat ride has been in soft opening mode for about a week. And it says later in the article, mouseheads will marvel at the new details and storytelling elements that have been added to the river journey, while infrequent visitors might not even notice what's been added or removed. And that's the point. Imagineering refreshed the ride in a way that perfectly fits the updated backstory by adding just enough to please Disney diehards, always on the lookout for the tiniest changes, without altering the frozen in amber memories of visitors who want things to remain just as they remember them, even if those memories can sometimes be a bit fuzzy and tinted with nostalgia. A sunken tramp steamer boat has been introduced to the hippopotamus scene, followed by a half-sunken boat taken over by 5 audio animatronic chimps, and a third scene featuring monkeys catching butterflies. A new culturally diverse animatronic safari troupe is stuck up a pole by a rhino and hyenas. The updated backstory of the ride now centers on Alberta Falls, a free-spirited adventuress and a woman of color. Well, so there you go. There you go, Lynn.
Sounds good. Have you seen any video of it?
I've seen all kinds of stuff. It's
it looks good.
Yeah. It's good. It's they're plussing. They're always changing stuff. Disneyland will never be complete as long as there's imagination left in the world. Oh, yeah, yes, we know. Okay. Well, Laughing Place has a report on Mickey's PhilharMagic reopen with new scene from Disney Pixar's Coco. Yeah. Mm-hmm. In celebration of the 66th anniversary of Disneyland, we stopped by the resort to see the updated Mickey's PhilharMagic at Disney California Adventure, which now features a scene based on Disney Pixar's Coco. And as they say, the scene appears between the Lion King and Peter Pan segments of the show. It transitions from the Lion King into a marigold, signifying the start of the Coco scene. From there, the scene pans down to the City of the Dead, where Miguel and Hector are on the back of a Skyway cable car singing Un Poco Loco. And it follows them down to ground level. Pepita and Dante as an huh. Why am I having trouble with this? Alabrigia fly into the shot, and Donald is poofed onto Pepita's back. He looks confused about how he got there. The hat ends up in Dante's mouth, and he gives Donald a chase. Donald gets on his back, and Dante flies him up into the clouds. We then cut to the Peter Pan sequence, and Donald and the hat fall onto the clock face of Big Ben, where Peter Pan and Tinkerbell just landed. So, yep, there you go. What do you think?
Cool. Well, it sounds good. It's a good movie, and it has good music, so I'm glad they added that. We went and saw the Philharmonic when we were there, but it was too, or Philharmagic,
yeah.
But it was too. They hadn't added this sequence when we went just a couple weeks ago. So
yeah, cool. I'm surprised. They keep adding stuff. That's they don't have to do that, and they just go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
Hey, speaking of Pixar. Mm-hmm. Finding Nemo Submarine Voyage reopening winter 2021. Yes. By the way, you can find the links to all these stories at thesweepspot.com. It's in our current events show notes there. So go, if you click through, and you can read the entire story. Guests looking to explore the depths of the ocean will once again be able to when the attraction reopens in the winter of 2021. Although not an exact date, it is nice to see that the subs will be back by the end of the year if everything stays on track.
Why do you think it's not open now? What do you think?
They're stalling for time.
Why? Oh, maybe not enough cast members?
I don't think they have enough cast members. I don't think there's enough you have, it's the safety concerns, once we get to the Delta variant of the virus, and we get to the Omega variation of the virus, and it's we'll see.
All right. I figured at first, with all the restrictions when the park first opened April 30th or whatever it was, I figured it was because of the social distance stuff, but I didn't. Then when everything went away magically on June 15th, then I thought that for sure, but then it makes sense if there's lack of cast members, but to run the attraction, it is a slow loading, attraction. It doesn't seem like it takes a lot of cast members to run it, though. I don't know how many subs they run at one time. If I had to guess, they run maybe 4, but...
No, it's got to be more than that.
You think?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe 6, but not a whole lot, right? I mean, it's not like 20, but... So, and there's only one cast member per sub, and then there's, like a couple on the loading area, so... It's not like a huge amount of cast, not like Indy or something where they probably have, 20 plus cast members. But anyway, just curious because it is kind of nice to see it going around. Kind of adds to the whole area. But
yeah. I think they're putting Atlantis in. No, I don't want to start rumors.
I don't know.
Okay, well, big news that broke officially while we were since we last recorded a main episode, and this one comes from the Orange County Register. It says Disney moving 2,000 Southern California workers to Florida campus, and the Walt Disney Company. This is a story from Mike Schneider of the Associated Press. So, Walt Disney Company said it planned to build a new regional campus in Central Florida to house at least 2,000 professional employees who will be relocating from Southern California to work in digital technology, finance, and product development. In a letter to employees, Josh Damaro, chairman of Disney Parks, Experiences, and Products, said the move would allow creative business teams to be better integrated. The new Disney campus will be located about 20 miles to the east of Disney World in a neighborhood by Orlando International Airport. So, yeah.
What do you think brought this move on, Ken?
There's lots of things going on here.
Yeah.
It's Disney. Okay, Disney's biggest property is at Walt Disney World, and they have 4 theme parks there and a bunch of hotels. I mean, all this other stuff they have there. The cruise lines go out of Florida, or the Bahamas or whatever they're actually registered. But we all know it's Florida. So they, it makes sense. Look, I think Walt Disney would have done this a long time ago if he had lived. He was focused on building. I mean, look at what he did with the studio, right? He built that Burbank studio. He custom built that for animation, right? And it was the features of the building. There's a lot of stuff that he purposely put into that campus, master planning it. And then he was focused on building Epcot when he passed away. And you mean to tell me if he had built an actual community that he wouldn't have moved at least some of the company's staff there?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm pretty sure he would have. Now, things have changed a lot since then. That's a long time ago.
Yeah. And
there's different issues as far as business climate and that sort of thing. Disney... Now, they did not say they're moving the TV, the movie and TV people, right?
Yeah, no, I don't think they would. Yeah.
But they said if your job, if you're in the parks, if you're in the resorts division, unless your job is specifically about Disneyland, then they might move you to Florida, and it'll be less expensive for Disney. There's just a lot of things at play here, and I don't really want to get into it because people don't listen to the show for those things. But I think Walt Disney would have done this a long time ago.
Yeah, it kind of makes sense. I think you're right on the. I mean, it doesn't say they're moving the whole entire Imagineering staff, right?
No, but there's going to be a lot.
They're not going to clear out that building.
Maybe they might.
Yeah.
And plus, a lot of people can do work. People can do more work from home.
That's true.
If the movie making and TV stuff has still had to stay around Hollywood. The thing of Universal moved a lot of their design people to Florida. There's a lot of people that do work with Imagineering and the other parts of the division around the area, like Imagineering's based in Glendale, right? So, and the neighboring cities of Burbank and Pasadena. Glendale's between Pasadena and Burbank, and of course, Burbank is where the corporate headquarters of the company are. Okay, well, there's a lot of companies that work with Imagineering and were started by people who used to work for Imagineering, all over those three cities.
Right. Yeah.
If you go through the directory from the Themed Entertainment Association, almost most of them are within those three cities. Not all of them, but a lot of them. And so a lot of them might end up moving too. I mean, you don't know. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see the impact. But yeah. So
it's hard to believe.
In completely, totally unrelated news, the Register had a story saying on union workers' planned protest against corporate greed outside Disneyland. And this is back on July 14th. This is Terry. I don't even know how to pronounce that last name. I don't want to butcher it, but Terry. But it's not a Brady McDonald story. Let's put it that way. It's from July 14th, so it's been a few days, but. As they point out, as Disneyland and California Adventure get back to full operations, 40% of the workers laid off during the pandemic have yet to be called back. And that was according to David Huerta, president of the Service Employees International Union, United Service Workers West. So, and in contract negotiations currently underway, Disney is still coming to the table with quote-unquote poverty wages, he said. Fortunately I would say for people, everywhere is hiring right now.
Yeah.
I mean, everywhere. So they don't have to go back to Disney. That's the thing. A 2018 Union Commission survey of 5,000 Disney employees, about 1/6 of the Anaheim Resort's workforce, found many who said they didn't make enough to pay for food, housing, and medical care. The coalition of 11 unions called on Disney to raise base wages to $20 an hour. That hasn't come to pass. The Disneyland Resort's lowest starting wage is $15.45 per hour, which is much higher than when it was $5.05 for me. Higher than the state's minimum wage of $14 an hour. Park officials said. It also has been paying for health benefits for furloughed workers for more than a year.
Wow.
Custodial workers, the folks who keep the walkways free of fallen popcorn, sanitize the park, and are charged with cheerfully answering visitors' questions, said they've been offered work in part-time rather than their previous full-time positions at slightly lower pay and without health care and other benefits. According to labor agreements signed last year by Disney and the unions, laid-off workers have a 2-year right to recall, meaning they get first crack at their old jobs and attendant benefits through the end of 2022. Disney must offer them the work before it can hire outsiders. In a private Facebook group, some rejoiced that rehiring was underway until they were warned that taking the part-time positions offered might nullify their right to recall to their old full-time jobs. So there's been some dispute over that as to what's going on and what's, so who knows? Disneyland needs people, and there's a lot of other places hiring right now. So it seems to me that the workers can, they have a little bit more power to ask for a raise, I would think. But we'll see.
Yeah, I think working at Disneyland, they ask a lot. They ask you to go above and beyond, and it's always good to make more money. So.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know. $20 seems a little high, but I don't. I mean, again, why not 30 or 40? But they also
I'm sure that'll be next.
Yeah. Well, they have to be realistic.
Once we're done with inflation, that'll be. Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, Yeah, and as usual, MiceChat.com has some updates. There's one from Dusty Sage on July 12th. It's titled Disneyland Update, You'll Get the Point in the End. And as he says, it was another big week for Disneyland with the reopening of a beloved attraction with major updates, details on plans for Halloween parties and festivities, the launch of discounted park tickets, and the return of more entertainment. Unfortunately, it's not all sunshine in paradise, so you can click through to see what he's talking about. There was a more recent update. It's called 2 Steps Forward and 2 Steps Back, and this is by Photomat. And he said, another milestone for Disneyland has come and gone. After a missed 65th anniversary last year that left untold thousands of special merchandise items unsold, Disneyland celebrated a quiet 66th birthday on Saturday. For this year's anniversary, there was a simple character cavalcade and some special treats for sale. While we were hoping to see something with a little more wow factor, we were there anyway to celebrate the theme park that started it all and bring you the views and news from the happiest place on earth. So yeah, more of the restaurants are opening up, and some of the more of the attractions, and it's coming back. It's coming back, folks. Disneyland's coming back, and of course, there's Walt Disney World. Have you done it yet? Have you started planning your next Disney getaway vacation? You really should if you haven't done it yet. You need a break. You need to get away. So, but, can you keep up with all these changes? Probably not. There's people who do it for us. It's concierge.com. That's CONCIEARS.com. They specialize in Disney getaway vacations. There are magical vacation planning partners. What you do is you tell them what you're thinking about doing, which Disney destinations you're thinking about going to, whether it's the cruise line, Ventures by Disney, Disney's Aulani in Hawaii, Disneyland, Walt Disney World, wherever you want to go that's Disney based. And you let them do the heavy lifting. It's not going to add any more expense to your vacation. It's just going to take out a whole lot of stress because they know the tips, they know what's happening, they know how to get you reservations. And what you do is you book with them. You book a package with them, like, theme park tickets and hotel stay, for example. And you tell them that the Sweep Spot sent you, and you'll get a gift. So check out concierge.com, our magical vacation planning partners.
Hello everyone, this is Eric Johnson with Concierge and welcome to the D180. While Ken and Lynn cover all things Disneyland, in the D180 we take a spin around the rest of the Disney universe and we do it in 180 seconds. Let's jump right in. We start our journey at Walt Disney World where the Halcyon Star Cruiser is preparing to land in Florida. The Star Wars themed resort experience is still quite a way from opening its docking bay doors, but Disney did release a teaser poster this week. Yep, a teaser for a hotel. That's how Disney does it, folks. Check it out for yourself and then read up on Disney's analysis of the images. We're getting a lot more of a look than you might think from a poster. Guests can choose parts to play while on board the cruiser, follow the path of the Jedi, or become an informant for the First Order. Maybe you can choose to not pick a side at all and become a high-class galactic citizen. We also see a family dining at the Corellia Dining Room, the supper club of the cruiser. They're enjoying a fine otherworldly meal. We also see a bit of the lightsaber training we know is coming. Finally, we see Kylo Ren and some First Order troopers ominously foretelling some sort of trouble on the ship. Good thing it looks like Chewbacca will show up to help save the day. We at Concierge are just as excited as everybody else to see what will come of this new concept in Disney resorts. But hey, other things are happening at Walt Disney World too. Imagineers just added a large crest to the front of Cinderella Castle with a golden 50 on it. That anniversary celebration is edging ever closer all the time. Starting this August, more entertainment returns to the resort. The Wonderful World of Animation projection show returns to Hollywood Studios on August 1st, delighting guests with its tale of 90 years of animation. On August 8th, Magic Kingdom guests can help Monsteropolis generate energy when they visit Mike Wazowski at the Monsters, Inc. laugh floor in Tomorrowland. On August 15th, Hollywood Studios welcomes guests back to the Beauty and the Beast live stage show. And finally, Turtle Talk with Crush surfs back into the living seas at Epcot on August 21st. Lots of entertainment coming back in advance of that October 1st premiere of Harmonious and Disney Enchantment at the Magic Kingdom. So there's plenty to see, even if you get to the parks before that October start date. Let's stick around the same area for now, because Disney Cruise Line is setting sail for the first time in over a year. The Disney Dream just departed on a test cruise with 300 vaccinated crew members and volunteer cast members. The Disney Fantasy will set out in mid-August. These are crucial steps in obtaining conditional sail orders from the CDC, allowing the Disney Cruise Line to welcome guests once again. All right, let's set sail east over the Atlantic. The Disney Magic is getting ready to serve the people of the United Kingdom with a host of short staycation cruises, but our destination is Disneyland Paris. The French park just released information about Halloween, Christmas, and New Year's events. The Halloween season will bring plenty of decorations and an event on October 31st itself packed with villains. Mickey and friends will have their own costumes to celebrate this spooky time of year as well. Disney's Enchanted Christmas will cover the holiday season, ending with a giant party on New Year's Eve. Throughout, festive holiday attire and visits from Santa Claus will be the norm. Sounds like a pretty good place to celebrate the new year. Here's hoping guests will be able to travel freely by then. And that's 180 seconds. I hope you enjoyed our quick spin around the Disney universe. If you'd like to learn more about these Disney adventures or just have a few questions, please come on over and visit the Facebook pages and websites of both the Sweep Spot and us, their official travel planners, Concierge. We look forward to planning something special for you and your family. I'm Eric Johnson, and this has been your D180.
Looks like Bruh Fox and Bruh Bear are causing some kind of commotion downstream. Please stay in your boats while we take care of things. Your visit to Splash Mountain will continue in just a bit.
Okay, on this episode, we're going to welcome back someone that we had on our last show when we talked about the kill boats, and that was Brian Carlson. He had a couple of his buddies that he worked there with, and that was a lot of fun. We got to talk and reminisce about all the little memories that they had there and the fun times as cast members. And this time is no different, but we're going to talk about Splash Mountain. And Brian has brought along some of people that he's known along the way working at Splash Mountain. So how's it going, Brian, and who do you have with you?
Going fine, thanks. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah.
So I've got with me tonight two people who were actually put onto Splash Mountain a lot earlier than I was. So I have Kim Hoynes here, and she was on Splash, I think, from, you said, like September 2019, or sorry, 88. That's right.
Wow.
88. And then Mason Nakamura is here, and he was moved over to Splash
in late spring of 1989, so in March, April timeframe.
Yeah.
Cool.
And so when I moved to Splash halfway through May in 1989, I was only moved over because it was opening so late that they needed 3 full shifts of people to run the thing. Mm-hmm. Morning swing and night crew. So I was on night crew for most of opening summer for Splash. But Kim and Mason were there way earlier, and Kim was even named to the core team, which is the group that basically is there when it's dirt and blueprints and not too much more.
Wow.
So she's got a lot of the really, really good stories from back before there was anything there besides girders.
Wow, that's cool. The Splash Mountain started out, didn't they have an original date, and then they had to make some changes to the ride, so it kind of got pushed back, or?
Yeah, it was supposed to be, I think, fall of 88.
Mm-hmm.
And there were a couple issues. The biggest one was getting the logs to cycle safely and be able to actually run using the computer system at the time, which just took months and months and months to actually get accomplished, because the infrared technology that sensed where the logs were in the flume was really early stage technology, and the computer kept getting overwhelmed and thinking that the logs were crashing into each other when they weren't, just based on like the water level splashing up and flagging a sensor, and that would shut the whole thing down. And so there were just many, many months of a lot of work behind the scenes trying to iron these little things out, sometimes one at a time, which might take a week or two just for one issue.
And I think with respect to the ride opening, you know, the ride was originally conceived as a off-the-shelf log flume attraction. It was actually made, I think, by the same one that did Knott's Berry Farm's log ride. And it was kind of envisioned that they would just pick up this thing off the shelf and that it would all work. And what they discovered was they made too many modifications in terms of how large the ride was, how big the logs were, etc. And as a result, a lot of the designs that they had used in prior log flume rides didn't work at all. And as Brian said, it became quite a deal to be able to space the logs out so that they could be cycled safely through the attraction, and not have, you know, two logs going over a drop at the same time, or you know, something like that happening that's a safety issue. So that was really what took a long time. I remember, for me, I was working in Tomorrowland at the time, and I had been chosen for opening crew, and we thought, oh yeah, we'll go over after my first summer in 1988. And then it just kind of went on and on. We watched the ride get built, and nobody was over there except the core team, because they couldn't get anything to work. So
yeah, when I started over there in fall of '88, we were working 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. because they were doing construction and building and all that during the day. And then we'd come in at night so that we could work with, you know, the engineers and all those people to try and get the whole ride control system part of it working. So it was pretty interesting.
Yeah, that's neat. What a time to be there. I mean, such an iconic attraction, and you were there, you know, from the beginning. Yeah.
I have a soft spot kind of for Splash. I mean, I made friends there that, you know, I still have, and it was like a family over there because we went through so much with it breaking down all the time and, you know, all that stuff. So it was one of the coolest things I did, I know, in my Disney career.
Do you remember the first time you got to ride it during the test time?
That's funny. Brian and I were talking about that because I was working, it was two of the guys and I, and they said, okay, you guys, you can go. And so I was in the front of the log, and, you know, they were sitting behind me. And so when we got off, I'm like, yeah, I really was the first person over, you know, the drop because I was in the front seat of the log. So,
and that was, I think, with the first log design.
Oh, yeah.
Correct.
Which was rather interesting when you went over that, what we call drop 5, or the Chickapin Hill drop. It would plunge into the tunnel, and the flat front of the log would basically cause this huge wall of water in front of you, and then the log would go through it, and the log would fill up with water, and everybody would be soaked from head to toe. And they decided, well, this design isn't going to work. So actually, before the ride opened in the spring of 1989, they did actually junk all the original logs and put in a brand new set of logs that has I don't know, what do you call it? It's kind of like a
scoop front.
A scoop front, which basically funneled the water away from the log towards the sides when it would come down through the drops, so that people wouldn't get as wet. So,
Ken, when was the first time that you got to ride it? Because I know you have a story where you got to go there, you know, during
people can listen to episode 17 of the podcast all the way back in the day. But yeah, June 16th of '89 is when I think just cast members in general from around the resort were there was no, it was just a park back then, but they were being told, okay, come on and ride, and it was just, it was cast members, but I was hanging out and I saw some people who I've told the story on the podcast before, but they saw us. We'd come down there after school, and they said, hey, do you, we can probably get you on tonight. And of course, keeping the attraction running was another matter. And I think it might have been, the park was closing, I think at 10 or something, but they finally, they took us inside through the, not through the exit, but just, down the staircase by the exit and then up and around. But they got us back in there, and they told somebody that, that I was like the son of a vice president of the company, because the company had so many vice presidents back then. I was just like, I was a 16-year-old. I was barely 16, and I had 4 younger friends with me, one of my siblings and 3 friends, and so no one was going to question why we were there, because it was, oh, that's a son of a vice president of, and of course there's so many vice presidents, they nobody's going to go, wait, that's not a vice president, so so we got to ride with Bruce Gordon, who was the show producer. That was June 16th. That was, because they did. You guys remember they advertised? They had the tie-in with McDonald's, Splash Cash. Oh yeah. Because the original plan had been, like you said, the original plan had been to open it up. The soft opening would probably have been in fall of '88, and then the grand opening was planned for right at the start of '89, and. So McDonald's does this tie-in, and the attraction's not open.
Yes. Yeah.
Were you guys there for filming that commercial?
We were talking about filming a little bit ago before going live for the show here, and the only one who remembers any filming is me, I think, and it was for Ernest Rides Splash Mountain. But we don't remember any commercials. We don't remember any commercials, and we also don't remember that horrible video of the guys dancing around in neon clothes and jacks.
Zip, zip, zippity,
axes.
Zippity. Yeah. No, Ernest Goes to Splash Mountain. That was a classic. I think I'm in that. I know I'm in that from the neck down.
Well, so. That was. I'll let Kim chime in here in a second, but that one was a little bit of a traumatic experience. Now, first of all, Jim Varney, rest in peace, was really funny and very friendly, and he treated everybody backstage just like we were a VP. And so I was actually in the craft services line because they had to feed us along with everybody acting and the rest of it. And so he was right next to me in the food line, and he's asking how things are going, and really super nice guy. But let's just say some of the other actors, including the ones who were in the costume pretending to be the ride operators, because of course you can't actually have a ride operator on camera doing the buttons. Some of those other people weren't quite so nice. And so we spent a lot of the day getting shooed off frame and around corners and in closets and stuff like that, because it was like, you can't be on camera. And it's like, well, if you want me here to actually do my job to make the ride run, I'm going to have to stand here, or this person who has no idea what's going on can stand here and do it, but I'm going to need a minute to tell them what button to push. So it was a little bit of a challenge that day for sure.
I don't remember what it was for, if it was like the VPs were riding or something like that, but we had to have a person at every lift and, where there were any kind of buttons that you had to press, because they wanted to make sure that we were there if anything happened, so that we could get it going again real quickly.
Yeah.
I don't think it was filming, but I think it was.
Oh, that was opening day.
Well, we did it opening day for sure. That they had
press day.
Yeah.
Yeah. The big opening press day. Yeah.
Because they wanted to make sure that the ride ran, even if they had to run it manually.
Right. So that meant you guys, if when the thing is running, after you've gone out to each station where there are logs resting and push the reset button to make them move one at a time, and then you press the all start where they all start moving, that's great. But if one of them breaks down, everything stops where it is, and you have to evacuate the thing and restart it, which takes, I think, a minimum of 40 minutes. Or if you have people at each dock box ready for that instance, because you don't want the press and the reporters to sit there thinking it broke down, then people like us would be on the side ready to move each log one at a time individually, hoping that they never noticed the difference. But luckily that didn't happen. And it ran miraculously all that first day without a breakdown. So
yeah, and everybody thought, oh, this is great. And then the next day it was like, forget it.
Oh, yeah.
It was just breakdown after breakdown after that.
I think I saw some of you on, because I rode that day and I thought, oh, they've got them inside the attraction here. And I figured, I figured that's what you guys were doing was
Absolutely.
You're making sure that, because we on the 17th, which was the July 17th press thing where they had Jim Varney come back and there's Tina Yothers and some other people, but they we actually got first in line that day too, so that we could be there for the official grand opening, and that was a lot of, and there were cast members right there inside the attraction.
Yeah. So there are dock boxes all along the flume, especially where there's any place where the logs actually come to rest. So at the base of the lifts or any place where there's a sorter brake or a gate brake. And the sorter brake is what comes up underneath the log to stop it. The gate brake is what flips back and forth in front of a log to stop it. But all of those have to be maneuvered when you're in maintenance mode manually from the side of the flume. And there's certain parts of the attraction where you can't get off stage to do that. So sometimes there would be, if you look in the right spot, there's a cast member sitting there in a folding chair and right next to a dock box because they had to be ready to push those buttons. So yes, you definitely would have seen some people adding to the show that day that normally wouldn't be part of the attraction.
That's great.
So we were talking earlier about, some of the issues with getting it rolling. And, after the big opening, there were a lot of instances where certain wear and tear issues came up that we hadn't dealt with before because it didn't run that long at once before opening. Mm-hmm. And so, the first week or two and a lot of the time during the first summer, we would have issues like the giant ball bearings that are underneath the belt bringing the logs up to the big lift would just overheat and be glowing like a comet. Wow. And so that would be like a night-long shutdown because they would have to take the logs off of the lift. They would have to peel back the belt. Imagine like a giant belt at the grocery store, but this one has a bunch of logs on it. And I don't know how long that sea lift is, but that's what, 100 feet, you think, or something like that?
Really long, yeah.
Super long. And so you have to peel that thing back, figure out which bearing seized up, and change it out. And so that would be at least 5-6 hour endeavor. And then we'd be standing out front explaining to people, sorry, you can't ride for like the rest of the night. So that part of it sometimes was not a whole heck of a lot of fun.
Yeah, guest control was not a lot of fun that first summer for sure, because we were down so much of the time.
Right. And then, you were just talking about getting to join the cast preview. Well, I remember doing that because there was an entrance back behind log storage where cast members could come from around the resort, kind of back over by Mansion and ride Splash Mountain without ever getting on stage. But the issue was when they were going down drop 5, they were on stage. And so if anybody was on GC guest control crew out front, you could spend an entire 8-hour shift just telling hordes of people coming up, no, you can't ride. No, those aren't real people going down. They're employees doing boat testing, So that was another really tough shift, was explaining to the normal guests who might have flown in from Kansas because they saw the McDonald's promo, just to ride Splash Mountain.
You can't ride. It's not open yet, even though there are people going on the ride.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh,
that was tough.
That was the long-term blessing of the design, but the short-term curse for you guys, where it was something to look at on the exterior, something theatrical, same thing you see with Thunder Mountain. Pirates is inside, Haunted Mansion is inside, Country Bears is inside. But these are things where you can actually see it going by. So for you guys, people, I'm watching people riding it. How come I can't ride it? And it's like,
Yes.
yeah.
Well, something else kind of related to that is we used to have people get confused because they were watching their family. And that first little loop, so you leave the station, you go up what's called A lift, and then you go around a little loop by the Briars, and then you go up B lift, which is where the owl is, okay? So that's at the very, very beginning of the ride. Well, a lot of people didn't know anything about it or how long it was, and they just assumed that 15 seconds later, you'd be going down the big drop. And so we had families out front sometimes trying to figure out, well, where's Aunt Susie or whatever, because there's 9 minutes of show going on in the second building that's behind the actual mountain. And so finally, 8-9 minutes later, someone will go down the big drop. But it was funny because we'd be on guest control out front and people would just be confused or even worried and say, I just saw so-and-so go up and they never came down. I'm like, well, trust me, they will come down. They did not fall out. Their log did not go upside down, because you can't see that there's a second show building from the bridge,
Yeah, once you go up the second lift, which is up the B lift, basically that very first big drop is the one that takes you into the back show building, and then of course you enjoy the show, and then when you leave the show building, it's basically when you go up the big lift to drop down off Chickapin Hill. So it's quite an experience. As it was a very long ride, actually.
Yeah, it's a pretty long attraction.
Mm-hmm.
So the second show building is on the other side of the railroad tracks, and then
Correct.
The end scene with the boat there. That's on the on the inside of the track, right?
Yeah, because you can see the train tracks go.
Yeah.
You can actually see the train go by.
Right.
Yeah, in the finale scene, you can see the train go through. Yeah,
there's a glass walled window
Right.
that you can actually see the train sometimes pass through.
And the people on the train can hear a little snippet of Zippity Doo Dah when they're going through and get a peek down into the finale scene too.
Right.
So now
Go ahead.
I was going to say one funny thing that they explained to me when I was getting trained that I remember is they were explaining that there's two buildings. There's basically the mountain building and then the show building, which has most of the scenes in it. But they explained that it was, at the time, the most earthquake-safe spot in all of Disneyland. And somehow it was because they had these giant rollers underneath both buildings, similar to what they say is under Nordstrom's in California. So what would happen, they said, in a giant earthquake was if you're in either one of the Splash Mountain buildings, it's very likely that you would come out completely unscathed. It's just that the building would probably be completely coming out at a different angle. Like it would roll around and face a different direction, but it would stay completely intact.
Wow.
It would be separated from the other building, but that was right when a lot of the new California earthquake laws were coming in, and so I think that added to some of the design changes. Is my guess.
Right. Wow. Well, I was just asking about the second show building because I remember being backstage, but it's always hard to figure the whole thing out when you're back there and to see. I mean, I didn't have a lot of opportunities to explore that building too much, except for just get to the storage area to clean out a boat or something or log.
Sure.
But yeah. Yeah.
Well, it was pretty nondescript, and really, depending on what angle you were coming from, sometimes you would have to think hard if you were looking at the show building for Splash or for Mansion, because it's really just pale green steel at the time. I mean, I haven't been back there for decades at this point, but it kind of looked all the same back there, and you sprinkle in a few dumpsters and stuff, and it, it's nothing special from the outside for sure.
Yeah.
So we were also talking about some pre-opening stories, and Kim especially was in on what we were telling you is the core team, and that's the the guys who are really trying to figure out how the line is going to work and how the loading is going to look, and helping fine-tune some of the show features and all these different things. So one thing that I know she was a big part of, and then I just barely came in on, was when we were finally at the point to cycle the logs. And then at night, you drain the flume, of course. It turned out that the logs, like the front of one would stick to the back of another one. And so that was happening, and that was a little bit of a mystery they were trying to solve. And then at the same time, they got all the show effects and the music and the lighting all set up, and started having us do some short tests with us writing in the logs. And we figured out pretty quick that the entire flume was so echoey and hard surfaced that you could be at the base of Sea Lift looking at the vultures and be hearing Brer Bear way back at drop 3 saying, "There's nothing in here but bees."
Oh, yeah.
And because it was just this echo going back and forth. And so then they had to spend a few days spraying this foamy stuff. It's not popcorn ceiling, but it's similar, all up and down the inside of that attraction, so that the show didn't get ruined with all the sound effects from one scene echoing down the hallway into the other scenes. And so that's part one of the story. Part two, going back to the logs sticking to each other, they started to do stuff like coat the front and back bumpers of the logs with different sticky and slimy substances, trying to get them to settle better when the water ran out at night. And so different things would be in different positions day by day, because they had to make it safe. Well, one day we came in and one of the little Brer Rabbit heads was no longer on the front of a log. Like somebody had sawed it off and taken it away. And then a couple days later, like 2 more of them were gone. And Kim probably knows better than me, but I don't know if somebody was actually in the attraction when it happened and they figured out what the deal was. But as the logs were settling, the back end of one would be pressed up against the front end of another one, and the point of contact was Brer Rabbit's face. And what would happen was this 800 or however heavy log, 800 pounds, would be shearing weight against the Brer Rabbit head, and what would happen is it would snap off and fly through the air like a cannonball and get stuck up in the ceiling.
Oh no.
So it literally was shearing rabbit heads. And they thought, okay, well, we can't have this happening. We can't have that happening when we're working at night and take out somebody that's trying to do night maintenance. And so they literally had to go through the entire attraction and saw off the Brer Rabbit heads and take them away.
Yeah, the logs went through quite a few, iterations to get to that final one, because, they changed the fronts, they had to take the rabbit heads off, many things. We'd go out there and logs would be like too close together on one of the lifts, and they have to figure out how did that happen. Well, then they had to add, those pre-lift belts so that it would, keep the logs far enough apart so you wouldn't have them going down a drop together or something like that. And then, at the drops, they had to add these, they're called sorter brakes and gate brakes, because same thing, they have to make sure only one goes over that drop one at a time. And so all of that stuff was just really, really involved once they figured out, okay, this is the issue. Now we have to design some kind of fix. What do we do? And so it ended up being way more complex than, original just log ride off the shelf like Mason was talking about.
You mentioned the water draining, and I wanted you to talk a little bit about that. The difference between that and Pirates. If you turn off the pumps in Splash Mountain, eventually the gravity brings the water back down to the reservoir, correct? And that way the flume is drained.
Yeah, that's correct. There's I think, what did we say, 4 pumps?
Yeah.
There's 4 main pumps, and basically underneath the attraction, there's some a structure the size of a subterranean parking garage that basically holds 475,000 gallons of water.
Wow.
And so there's two main pumps for each circuit, one for the front, one for the back, if I remember right. And each one, they basically move 20,000 gallons of water per minute. So, you know, when you turn off the water, eventually it all drains back into the parking structure down below the building, and you don't see any water. But it is a big deal to turn the water on in the morning, because it, you know, with that volume of water, it really goes through the flume very, very quickly. So that was always a big deal when we had to turn on the water. We'd have to make a number of announcements and make sure that, you know, we knew where people were, so that there were no maintenance people on the attraction, obviously for safety reasons, because somebody could get severely injured by all that water going through.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't uncommon for there to be ladders, you know, people working on painting different parts of the ride and stuff like that. And so I was telling Brian the other day, you know, we'd make announcements and we'd have to say, like, agua, pronto, you know, make sure that you know you can get out of that water. Yeah, I mean, get out of the flume, or you're going to, you know, be in there with the water. So
I think the animator Dave Feighton had a story about that. He would be programming a figure, and then, you know, he would be sitting in the flume, and then they would hear an announcement, you know, we're going to turn on the pumps, and he'd be like, I got to get my equipment out of the way, you know.
Yeah, you were required, I remember, to do like 10-minute warning, 5-minute warning, 1-minute warning, or something, you know, because you had to give people a lot of notice so that they could actually get out of the flume and you can get to a call box if they needed you to postpone turning on the water. So it was quite an experience. I remember turning on the water.
Well, and it's a pretty involved process too, because I was a lead and a trainer on the attraction too, and so when I had the opening shift, I'd be there at 5 a.m. Park opens at 8, because you have to walk the flume dry to make sure that, okay, you don't have a sorter break or something like that that has some kind of issue with it or anything like that. Do all that, walk the flume first, and then you add the water, and you know, then you get log cycling. You have to add all the logs, and so it was a really timely endeavor to just get the ride open in the morning, because you had to check so much stuff.
Absolutely. And you know, during a downtime or at night, there are a certain number of logs at the different breaks, because log storage only fits so many. But for different reasons or different times in the day or night, you might pull logs or add them. So there's front log storage and rear log storage, and both of those are near the station where you can you know, take some on or what have you. But to start with, in the morning, a certain number are already out on the flume, like Kim was saying. And once you get those moving, then you can add other ones. But it does take a good number of crew. And so it's not like somebody just shows up at the ride 5 minutes before the park opens and just flips a switch from, you know, red to green and ready to go. And because of all that time-consuming stuff to turn it on, and then certainly to close it at the end of the night, that's why we needed 3 shifts worth of people, because you had to have an opening shift to get the thing running in the morning, swing shift in the middle of the day, and then for us on night crew, because on opening summer I was pretty much like 5 or 6 in the evening until 2 or 2:30 in the morning. You know, the park would close at 1 o'clock, but anybody in line had the right to continue to wait in the line if the ride was running. And so we could have an hour's worth of people still in the queue at 1 o'clock when the park closed, and have to cycle until 2, and then drain the flume and close everything down. So, and then at 3:30 go to Denny's and have banana cream pie at breakfast. Yeah.
Oh,
but
yes.
that's why they needed 3 shifts of us for opening summer, instead of just the core team, which was the original plan. Because, you know, the core team, it is quite an honor. I mean, it's the cream of the crop, and they pull their best people. And usually it was, at the time, what they would call A's, which are people who have been there a good long time and have seniority and a lot of experience. So my wife officially was on opening crew for Splash, but only because her second day of training was the opening day of the attraction. But she did pretty well as a trainer and then eventually a lead. And so she ended up on the core team for Indiana Jones a couple years later. So that's fun.
Yeah, it's definitely an experience that you won't get anywhere else, just dealing with all these things. And, you know, you go out there and logs are crashed together, or it's, you know, pushing too much water and you're going to drench everyone. And then they have to figure out, okay, now what do we do about this? Because we certainly can't open the ride like this. So,
and you mentioned when you turn the water on, it's got to stabilize first, right?
Yeah, although the way the pumps work, it doesn't take too long to stabilize. The water quickly comes up to the level at which the attraction runs. Because, I mean, the flume is a fixed height throughout. So once you put the water in, it just pretty much goes through pretty quick. So it doesn't really take that much time to stabilize. You know, usually, you know, within 10 minutes you are ready to go, even if you have to drain the flume. You know, and in the middle of a breakdown, because occasionally we'd have breakdowns where we have to drain the flume.
You also mentioned the hour wait at the end of the night. Just describe how that was. Okay, there was no fast pass. All right, I want our younger listeners to realize that no fast pass, and that first summer. The queue would stretch back past Mansion. You'd have to have a crossover.
Yep.
You know, can you describe what that was like?
Well, it was so involved that there would be a crew of people inside running the attraction, and then there would be a second crew of at least 8 of us outside doing guest control, and sometimes 10 or 12, I think.
Yeah. Sometimes there are three different guest crew rotations.
Yeah.
Because, you know, the very first summer we had 2 crossovers. I think there was a crossover at Haunted Mansion.
Right.
Yeah.
And then there was another one.
It was by Pirates.
By Pirates,
yeah. Because it went down along the river, and basically there was another group of people that had to run the different crossovers. And then once you got into, you know, you went along the ride, and then you got into the area where the Bear Theater, now Pooh, I guess, is. There would actually be a queue there, and then you would go in the building.
Yeah.
And then eventually, you know, so at the peak, I think our total wait time was like 2 hours and 40 minutes if you got in line at the very end of the second, if we had all the crossovers open.
Yeah.
It was extremely long. So there was a big push the first summer to try to make that line shorter by making us go faster. You know, granted, we had our breakdowns, but we were talking about whether we were doing these. There were a couple of capacity challenges to try to increase the overall capacity of the ride, because when it opened, it was originally, they were thinking, 2,000 guests per hour, not a problem. Well, in reality, you know, when we first opened, I think they would never run more than 36 logs.
Right.
And that would get us a capacity of like 1,350,
I think,
about per hour. And that was assuming we didn't break down. And but then our goal at one point was to try to get up to 42 logs and get to about 1,800 people per hour. And that was quite an experience that we did as a challenge. But I think they decided that that wasn't feasible in the long run. So I think
38 to 40, I think, is what we usually.
Yeah, 38 to 40 became a lot more typical for how many logs we would run, so that we could try to get the capacity somewhere around 1,600, I think, per hour. And the intent of that was obviously to keep the line down so that we wouldn't have these, you know, two plus hour waits for people to get onto the attraction. Because it did take a long time, and for people who had to sit in line, I mean, it wasn't particularly fun. You know, they would eventually get up to the mountain, and we were talking about this earlier. You know, when you're in the front, you cross over at the Haunted Mansion, and then you're in the front of the mountain right there, and all you suddenly you see these large green open spaces, and you can watch the logs come over, and it's exciting. But what you don't realize is you got to go around the corner, and then there's another hour and a half, you know, before you can actually get on the attraction, because there's so many other switchbacks later on. But
Well, Brian can speak to this, but there were some challenges with loading too, because they were different variations in the seating configuration.
Oh, that's right. So I can't remember if the original logs were 2, 2, and 3 with the 3-seater in the back, but I think
I do remember.
2.
I do remember because I was obsessed at the time. Let's go back just a slightly before the attraction opened. And you talked about the previous set of logs. It was originally designed for 8 adults, right? And,
yes.
You know, it was 2 seating. You know, so you could have lap seating, you know, for a couple or a parent and a child and that sort of thing. And so they got rid of those and they bring in these other ones. And the seating configuration at first, I believe, was 2, 3, 2.
Yeah.
And then they did switch it to 2, 2, 3. So they put the 3 in the back.
Yes.
So, anyway, go ahead.
Well, so that's it.
Part of that was from a weight perspective, it was better to have 3 in the back if you could, because when you loaded those logs, you wanted them never to be front heavy, because if you had a front heavy log going down the last drop, everybody got wet. And so part of putting 3 in the back, I think, was also to make it easier for you to try to weight the log towards the back.
Yeah. The thing with that though is, you know, they're switching those out and they can't just do it in 5 minutes, and it was 1 log at a time. And so they also had to switch the logs around, I think in the evenings and when it wasn't busy. But that meant it was 1, 2, or 3 at a time throughout a day. And so those of us that were on group, because there's front group and rear group, loading people onto the logs, you would have loaded up a 2, 3, 2 and have to look back and make sure that the second log back behind the rear dock position actually matched up with how you had grouped it. Otherwise, you'd have to go up and tell your 3 to switch with the 2. And if it was a group that didn't want to split up from the other 2 in the front, I mean, it just really slowed us down. But you wouldn't know log by log what was coming around the corner, and you had to really be flexible with trying to keep it moving. Otherwise, the line would just keep going back to Fantasyland.
And they got rid of that with the newest set of logs, which have been around for a while now.
Yeah, those have been around. Yeah,
individual seating basically.
Yeah, those are good, and they also accommodate larger groups, or maybe, you know, a mom with a couple kids if they want to be in the back, or you know, different body sizes and all the rest of it. So I think now they've kind of got it right. You know, one other thing that held us back, and I don't remember what the cause of this was, but I think the way they were trying to adjust the belts to bring the logs to a stop in the station, it was, for a while, it became too abrupt. And because of that, little kids in the front were getting bloody lips because their face would slam against the interior bumper in the front seat.
Oh, jeez.
And so then we had to tell all these groups, no kids in front, no kids in front. And how fun do you think that was to work on the ride and just be telling people no kids in the front? So I think the programming guys figured out how to do something so that the belts came to a more slow stop and not just so abrupt where kids' faces would just go slamming into that rubber, because it was rubber, but it was hard.
Yeah.
And, you know, I had kind of forgotten about this until we were talking about just the size of the line. There used to be, you would have just the whole area back there at the back of Critter Country between the stores and the attraction would be, they had the switchbacks back there. They don't do that anymore, but because now you got like character meet and greets back there, but back then it was just a sea of people just switching back and forth.
You had multiple switchbacks before you could even get in the barn entrance, and then we would have problems with people trying to hop over It was kind of a fence and a bunch of landscaping that, you know, right after you go in the barn, you kind of come around to the right and you can actually see the guests before you go up some stairs. And we were actually having problems with people hopping over that fence and hopping through those plants, trying to basically cut in line. And eventually, I know the opening summer, they planted natal plum there.
Yeah.
To try to stop people from doing that because it was basically thorny and full
Right.
of spines to keep people from, cutting in line. Because it was because the line was so long and we broke down so much, people were, it would happen, unfortunately, that people would try to cut in line.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, something that, I don't know, Ken, you might have paid attention, but we had an original costume design that wasn't really flattering for the girls. It was the bib overall top to the, blue outfit that we wore, and we had a rope belt, and they realized that those weren't very flattering to a lot of people, and so before we even opened, we went to pants and then the shirt, and they did away with the bib overall thing. So we went through a whole costume change before the attraction even opened.
yeah, they had the high waters for the women,
Oh,
which was
yeah.
pretty hilarious. They were like capri pants with a bib overall.
Do you remember those costumes at all, Ken, or no?
That would have. I don't think I paid as close attention before the attraction. Before you got to the just, we're getting close to opening. Because I remember the costumes that it opened with, and I remember because there, of course, cast members would be standing out in front trying to handle guest questions during the testing, But yeah, no, the costumes they ended up with when they opened up were fine. There were a lot of other, like you were talking about the landscaping, on the bridge when you're in front of Chickapin Hill.
Yeah.
There was the rock, the stone, the fake stonework used to be flat, and then people would just climb up on top of that to get a look at the attraction.
Yeah.
And so that was replaced and made slanted.
That's exactly right.
And they also put some barricades, actually, some wooden barricades on that hill. Brian had a story about, I think we were talking about earlier. So.
Oh yeah, it was flat and it was green. It was like golf turf grass, like a putting green. And what you would have is people in line would put their kids up there to run around or to pose for a picture. But the problem was if they took 2 or 3 steps back, they would go down into the flume. So I don't think that actually happened, but I think pretty quickly they realized that they needed to plant a lot more stuff that was not enticing to go run around on. And then I think at one point there might have also been somebody either on grounds crew or maintenance who stepped through the grass into air and maybe hurt a knee. And if they had stepped with both feet, they would have gone through and hit the flume or something like that. I might be remembering wrong, but after that, they ended up hanging some netting to catch anybody.
Yeah, there was a portion, the portion that went back by the Haunted Mansion.
Yes.
Because there was that little thing. Yeah, there was, because of the way that you had the undulating, they're basically planters.
Right.
And you could, but because of the growth of the grass, you couldn't tell.
Yes.
So if somebody like one of us sweepers or something had climbed over to get whatever a guest had dropped in the grass there, where there was the risk of falling through. So so that netting appeared, huh?
Yes.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah,
I had forgotten about that.
Yeah, it's rope netting. Yeah. Well, and it also probably helped with catching trash too, because we were talking earlier about the infrareds and how many breakdowns there were. Some of the breakdowns were actually mechanical problems, like I was saying, like a ball bearing overheating or, a physical item just literally failing. But many of the breakdowns when we were trying to cycle for the first few weeks was the computer system shutting itself down, like literally pulling the plug on itself because the infrareds were flagged in such a way that the computer thought that 2 logs were about to crash into each other. But if you had a duck come in for a landing from the river and decided to use the drop 5 run out for that, or somebody drops a popcorn box from the queue and it lands down in the flume, it just has to float by one infrared sensor and the entire ride goes down because the computer thinks that there's a log out of sequence. And so that netting might have also helped with trash getting thrown or flying down in there because it was a real issue. I'm assuming now it's gone through dozens and dozens of iterations to where the computer would know if one random infrared gets flagged that it's probably a piece of trash or a bird and not an entire log out of sequence. But, you know, you got to remember at this point, it's the late 80s and computers were nothing like what they are now. So that thing would be so safe that it would pull the plug on itself. And I would tell that to guests. You know, we would say, the reason it's broken down is because it's too safe. And of course, they would just laugh in my face. But,
well, we had there was an engineer from Allen Bradley who did the initial control system on the ride, who worked with the core team for, gosh, well over a year, I think.
Yeah.
He was there working on that ride control system, you know, trying to get it worked out. And Wayne was definitely part of the family.
Definitely.
oh yeah, those guys treated us like the team. You know, it wasn't just the smart computer programmers avoiding the ride operators. I mean, they definitely were part of the crew. That was a cool aspect of it when I was back at a college age.
Yeah, it was like a family over there. I mean, we spent so much time together, you know, and especially before we opened.
Oh yeah.
Where it was us and it was the maintenance guys, and you know they were there almost as much as we were because there was things going wrong all the time.
Sure. So yeah, Kim was describing 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. shifts to get the show elements and different things like that up and running. So when I came on in May of '89, moving from the river into Splash, that's where they were trying to do more things like boat testing. And so we had a night crew that was the mirror image of a day crew, and all of us had 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. or vice versa. And so literally there's 15 of us walking from Splash Mountain back over to the lockers behind Space Mountain, you know, at 6:05 in the morning. And on our way, we would have passed the group that was coming back to start work. And then 12 hours later, the actual reverse. And it's because we needed to do 24-hour boat testing where you're loading a bunch of sandbags onto a log to simulate the weight of a certain number of people. Other logs you had to put in, Mason can tell me because he's literally a rocket scientist, but the instrument that tests the G's.
Yep. G-force meters.
Okay, well.
Accelerometers.
The accelerometer, that's
Yeah.
it. So we used to have to strap that into the logs and then send it down drop 5, and then they'd come back, take the reading, load it into a different log. And so we had 4 12s, so 4 12-hour shifts, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., 4 days in a row, and then 3 days off for like 3 or 4 weeks trying to get that thing open. And so to Kim's point, that's definitely a bonding experience because you're there all night long, you're telling jokes, you're sitting around waiting, you know, the whole hurry up and wait aspect. Or you're schlepping sandbags and doing super hard work.
Yeah, it's good or it's sandbags. Yeah.
Right. And then, of course, then we got used as the human sandbags, like Kim was saying.
Then they progressed to cast members.
Yes. and random
Vice President's
sons
children.
of vice. Yeah, exactly. Sons of vice presidents.
Speaking of that, wasn't there a time when Michael Eisner's first ride, wasn't there still scaffolding or whatever, and they had to tell him to by the way, duck when you go down the drop or whatever. I mean, I remember a story like that where there was like still scaffolding, but he wanted to take a test ride. And
There was scaffolding for a long time, so I wouldn't doubt that that's probably true. I don't remember being there when he was there, but I did get a day off occasionally.
Well, Kim, when you got there, describe. Do you remember what it looked like when you got there in terms of, you know, lots of gray still, you know, stuff hasn't been painted in and.
Oh yeah, I mean, scaffolding everywhere. We had to wear hard hats. I mean, we weren't even wearing a costume then. Like I was wearing mountain hiking boots, you know, and jeans, and you had to have, you know, warm clothes because it was cold then. Oh yeah, and we're, you know, back behind the green wall because we were off stage. But just, they were painting, they were doing, you know, lath work, they were, you know, like you were talking about them being in there doing audio work, and it was just amazing to see. You know, it was hard to understand when they would talk about, okay, this is going to go here, this is going to go here, before it was all finished, and we're trying to figure out now, what are the evacuation routes and how do you go and all that. And the building wasn't even completed yet. So that part was really hard in the beginning because it was all so disjointed. But, once it started to really come together, then it's like, okay, I understand now how the flow goes. And, but it was pretty amazing to just watch all that happen from, it still being really not anywhere near completion when I went over there in fall of '88 to, July of '89 when we officially opened.
Well, and, backing it up even further, when I started in spring of '87, that was when it was still New Orleans bear country. And it was still actually the mountain that just had Rufus snoring on it. And I think at the end of that summer, that's when they put the green wall up to take the dirt away and start making the scaffolding. But so while Kim was inside there watching it from the ground up, that's when I was on the river getting ready for my keelboat stories to tell on your podcast 30 years later. But one interesting piece of that was while the Drop 5 run out, the little loop that actually pokes into the river near the canoe dock, while they were building that, the canoes were closed. And so during that time, it was, I don't know, probably not a full year, but there was a good long time where they were not running the canoes and they were not training anybody on the canoes. And so a couple weeks before the green wall was going to come down and there could be a lot of guests actually getting down into what was still bear country at the time to ride bear band and the canoes, they needed to train a bunch of us. And so I knew the keel boats from my first summer, but not canoes. And they had a canoe class. So the canoes were all tied up, but they got 2 of them unlocked and they had 4 trainers. I think they had 2 master trainers, 4 general trainers, and then like 20 of us trainees in 2 canoes, all in canoe costumes. And all we did all day long for 8 hours for 2 days in a row was row around that river. And then come to a landing back at Bear Band or Hungry Bear, which wasn't accessible to guests, and then switch spots so that a different guy could practice steering in the front and a different guy could practice steering in the back. But the trick there was all of the guests are at New Orleans Square watching us go by over and over and over. And they kept asking the people on Pirates and Mansion, how do we ride the canoes? And it's like, well, the canoes aren't open. Well, yes, they are. I just saw one go by. So
it's an illusion.
I was doing that while Kim was behind the green wall watching Splash Mountain come to life. And I think Mason was over in Tomorrowland about that.
I was still in Tomorrowland. Yeah, I was working with Kim's sister on the monorail.
Oh, there you go.
Which was quite an experience. And did a summer on Submarine Voyage, which was really fun.
You got the new Mark V monorails, right? I mean,
that's right. In fact, while I worked on monorail, we retired the very last Mark III. So I did actually get trained on the Mark III monorail, and Monorail Red was the very last Mark III. And there's actually a picture of a bunch of us cast members. I think your sister's in that picture too. And we're parked over Submarine Lagoon. It was the last time that train actually went around the park, and it was a cast only thing. It was really kind of cool. But yeah, then we got to inaugurate all the Mark V trains, obviously, when I was in Tomorrowland. That was an exciting experience. And then to go from there over to Splash Mountain was really a really neat experience because nobody had ever done Splash Mountain before. So it's kind of like where everybody's learning. We all got trained, but then we'd actually have to learn a whole mess of other things in addition to our training to be able to actually, be good cast members on the ride, because everything that first summer went wrong. Everything you imagined could have gone wrong. So, we'd have all kinds of different failures that, they'd have to try to figure out what was going on.
Well, it's some places too, like the before the drop, the first drop 1, there's that loop that you can see from the front. And, if we had a breakdown, you'd get up there if you were doing the evacuating of that spot. And sometimes the guests would be out of the logs. And it's
right.
Hey, you guys. And in the finale too, they'd get out.
Yep.
It's like, okay, you can't get out of the logs. That's not safe.
Yeah, there was one time where I was sweeping down there by the Drop One Runout. I was down there sweeping, and I look up, and there's some teenage girl is standing there by the runout, on the evacuation, walkway there, and I'm like, "What are you doing?" And she said, "I jumped out before the drop."
People would panic, especially at the base of Sea Lift.
Yeah.
If you're waiting, you've been through the Laughing Place, and you're in that scene is called the Burrow, where Mrs. Possum and Mrs. Rabbit are bemoaning the fate of Brer Rabbit. The logs are at a standstill because only so many can be on Sea Lift to go down Drop 5, and so there might be 2 or 3 logs waiting in the sorters, and they're stopped, and some people freak out and hop out, and sometimes once in a while, they would figure out that there's probably got to be a phone there, and they would pick it up and ask for help and say, "Can someone come get me? I got to get out of here."
Or they
would just walk around. Yeah.
Or go out the emergency door, and then you knew, okay, and then so we're getting a ride stop because somebody got out of a log and they went out the door, so we got to go find them.
Yes.
Make sure they're not on the ride somewhere.
Yeah, because if you're at the base of Sea Lift and you get out and you go through the door, you can take 2 steps and go into the flume at the top of B Lift, which is where that owl is. That's the meetup spot for that door. And so if somebody is blinded by being in the dark for 5 minutes and they walk out into the sun, they could step into the flume and just get instantly plowed over by a log. So yeah, you gotta hit the ride stop and then send somebody out. Or if somebody happens to be out, like a lead or something, or checking something, then maybe you can get to it without having to stop the whole attraction. But definitely is all about safety, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's a big piece of machinery, people. I mean,
right?
Yeah, you don't get out of a moving car. Why would you get out of a moving log?
Well, that's what I told her. I said, "Hold on," because I knew how to go get her, and then I knew that I could hear that the attractions hosts had stopped the ride and were trying to figure out where she was. But I said, I would have been more. I said, I'm pretty timid about heights and stuff, and I said I would have been more afraid to jump out of the moving log. I would have.
Yeah.
Me too.
I would have just held on for dear life and closed my eyes or something.
Yikes. Now, Ken, I was gonna ask you a question. Did you ever back sweep the splash queue?
Many times. Oh, I'll do one better than that though. Before I got my job there, that first summer, my friends and I, since we'd been on everything else in the park a million times, we would ride Splash over and over again. So we would just get back in line when we got off of it. So we would get so disgusted at people leaving trash especially in the interior queue, that we would collect it on the way out. Somebody must have told casting, because when I went to go apply, they put me in custodial.
That's funny.
I was going to say that was a fate thing.
Yes.
That you were doing it before you were even being paid to do it.
It was destiny. Well, if you've been in that queue enough times, you know that parts of it are lined with wood and other parts are that same echoey stucco surface that was causing problems inside the attraction. Well, the queue is not sprayed with the foamy stuff that dampens the sound. So what we used to have to do during breakdowns is walk through the attraction and tell people a few at a time, because the all-ride PA would project into the queue. Actually, I think it was a separate queue PA, but you couldn't hear it because it was so echoey. So we would have to actually walk the line and tell people, okay, it broke down, please wait, or it broke down and we have a glowing ball bearing and we know perfectly well it's not opening up, so you better just leave, whatever the situation was. But you can imagine, no matter what the situation, it was not fun to back walk the line and tell people all this bad news over and over. So my wife wanted to make sure I brought up a couple instances where she was doing that exact job and twice found celebrities entertaining the crowd. She I think it was one where we had to walk back through there and tell people that they could wait, but there was no guarantee it was going to open. And I think she had to go back in to tell them that it was going to be another hour or something like that. And so she was getting booed, but she came up to this one section where everybody was quiet. And it turns out it was kind of the bend, kind of where you can look down and see the Brer Rabbit final character through the wall. And there's a little knoll there where there's a place where you could kind of sit down. And she went around the corner, and there was Bette Midler. And Bette Midler was singing to the people in the queue. And so they didn't mind one bit staying in that line longer.
Great concert.
And she was super nice to Jen too. And she said, "Oh, honey, you're having a rough day," you know, and gave her a hug or something like that. And so that's one really cool story. And then another time she had to do that exact same thing, a different part of the line on a different part of the day. Harry Anderson was doing card tricks for everybody, you know, from Night Court.
Yeah.
So some of those celebrities kind of really helped us out here and there, depending on what day it was and how many times we broke down.
Well, it's kind of interesting that they were waiting in the line too. Bette Midler was just in the middle of the queue. I mean, that wouldn't happen in this day and age.
That's true.
There were a couple times when I remember she was still doing pictures for Disney back then. So there were a couple times I know that they brought her back through the exit and she boarded. But, you know, she was one of those people, I remember, who were like, you know, don't
treat me different.
Treat me different, you know, even though I've come through the exit, you know, with an entourage.
Yeah, you're saying don't treat me different.
Well, they were always,
like I'm still a I'm
you know,
not the queen.
Go let those people on who are waiting. Don't, you know, make them wait for me. You know, wait until we can clear out basically the people who are on the dock, and then they could get in. On their own. They were always. So
somebody we worked with in custodial bumped into Ron Howard and his, you know, at the time Bryce Dallas Howard wasn't a famous actress, she was just a kid, right?
Oh yeah.
And they bumped into him waiting in line. I don't think it was Splash, but you know, they said, "Are you sure you want to wait in line?" You know, he said, "Hey, my kids have to learn that they can't just skip ahead of everybody else just because what I do for a living."
Nice.
You know? He says, you know, we're just here like anybody else. You know, we're not. Why would we skip the line?
That's cool.
Yeah. Well, you know, Mason was talking earlier, you know, about line skipping and how people would find soft spots and kind of jump over or kind of muscle in, and that exact spot he was talking about where those plants got put in. There was another reason why they did that. And it goes back to when we would close, because I was almost always on night crew. And when they would make the park announcement saying, you know, ladies and gentlemen, Disneyland has ended its normal operating day. At that point, anybody who was not actually in the line couldn't get into it. Now, we wouldn't be jerks. If you were like 5, 10, 15 feet away, we would let you come up, you know. But you know, a minute after that announcement, no more people could get in line, and we would be stationed, one, sometimes two of us, at the end. And we would tell the person at the end of the line, you will be the last person, nobody else will come in after you. And so what would happen, though, is the line would get sucked in and used up, and the last person would then be inside the building. Well, people would hop through those windows in the place where the big copper pot was, or over that small fence, and think that they could get on. But then the cast member at the end of the line would tell them, okay, well, you have to come with me, but you're leaving. You're not getting on the ride, because we know you just hopped through that window. But over the years, they fortified it even more, so there's really no way to get through there unless you really want to risk getting scratched by the plants. Because like Mason was saying, you kind of learn and grow from it, and we had to adjust as we went along. But you know, people were hopping through the window, they're cutting all kinds of stuff because they were just desperate after seeing all those McDonald's commercials. They wanted to go on. They wanted to go on that dang thing, you know.
Well, and I think that there was still kind of a shortage of cast members, because I remember, you know, I'd work the day crew, you know, the day shift, and then if I wanted to, I could stay and work till, you know, the closing shift. Because we had people call out, or there just weren't enough people because guest control sucked up so much of the crew. And so, you know, you could pretty much work however long you wanted to.
Yeah, there were a lot of doubles for sure.
So cool.
Well, I remember, now you might be able to tell me something I didn't know before. I remember, okay, like I said, June 16th, 1989, I got on there. And I remember that the unbroken time of soft opening, it was June 29th. And from that day forward, it just was open. I mean, except for, of course, 101s. It was open until, it grand opened on July 17th. Now, were you saying that there was a time before June 29th that guests got on?
Yeah, my recollection, Mason, that it was June 20 of 1989 that we actually put guests on in the evening, because I remember working that day, and we were just cycling cast members and the supervisors for the area came over and said, "We're going to open," and we're like, really? Because I mean, we'd only worked with cast members, so trying to get guests through was a whole different thing. And then that was an experience, because they had to basically they did it at night because there weren't that many guests, so it was easier for them to manage the guest control that first day. So they tried a soft opening at night, and that was my recollection, was the first time we actually put guests from the park on the ride. And I remember they were really thrilled. I mean,
I bet
people came off that ride with a huge smile on their face. They were just thrilled to be on it, and that it was running, and that they could actually get on, because nobody thought it was going to be open. And so, but so that time period between the soft opening and when I think that was the unannounced soft opening, and then there was the soft opening where they announced it, that the ride would be open, and then of course the official grand opening, which was Disneyland's birthday in 1989. So I think part of that was so that they didn't have to. The ride might be open when you were there between the 20th and the soft opening day. You weren't guaranteed that the ride would be operating, but it might be open.
Right.
And I seem to recall we did quite a bit of cycling with guests, though, in that time period, although we broke down a lot, which was always exciting.
Yeah.
And, it had gotten better by opening by the 17th of July, but we still broke down a lot.
Yeah. Well, I remember I was coming in for a guest control. I was the guest control lead, and the ride had been down all day. I get out of my car, lock my keys in my car. I'm like, oh man. But then, transportation came out, and they, of course, got the Slim Jims stuck in my car door to get my keys out. But finally, I'm on my way to the attraction, and I open the door to the, it says the molasses vat door, right? The door handle comes off in my hand. Oh my gosh. No, actually, I think it came off, and I must have dropped it, because I bent over to pick it up and ripped the seat of my pants. So I go in and tell them, okay, I'm here, but guess what? Now I'm going to wardrobe. And just a great day all the way around, because then I got to be outside when the ride had been down all day. It's like, not fun.
Now that's funny. I was wondering what Kim's molasses fat story was, because on Facebook, some of us were joking around about a week ago, because all of us put up pictures on July 17th of ourselves in costumes, and somebody put up a picture of the molasses fats, and I said, I have a story of Kim Hoynes and me at right outside the molasses fats door, coming in from a guest control shift, and it was at twilight, and I remember a blood-curdling scream and Kim's fingernails digging into my wrist, and I looked down and saw what I probably would have thought was a capybara, but really it was just a Splash Mountain rat. And it somehow decided it wanted to get into the molasses vats as we opened the door, and it came out of the bushes and crossed our path to get in there. And she screamed bloody murder, and I'm not sure what happened. And so I said, oh yeah, it's Kim Hoynes' molasses fat story. And one of our other friends said, oh no, there's a better molasses fat story. So I think that's the one about your pants.
Probably.
That must be it. But yeah, the New York subway, I don't want to cast aspersions on the current day Splash Mountain, but let me tell you, the summer it opened, there were rats under there that could rival the New York subway system.
Yeah, probably like the ones that are on the island.
Oh yeah.
But that first summer, as Brian was saying, you get to the end of the night after we'd cycle, and we'd be slowly reducing the number of logs as we got down the line. We would get down around 36 right when we cycled the last guest, and then after that we'd have to pull about, I think, 8.
Yeah,
about 8 logs. I think we'd have to pull off into the storage area. So that always became an exciting task because if you've never tried to move a log with a big, huge push pole, Brian was probably pretty good at it because he worked on keelboats and he could lean. He was one of these people who would lean way over and never end up in the flume. But I know there were several of us, myself included, who basically would lose their balance at some point and basically fall over on their back into the water, and there would be this huge splash. And it would happen unfortunately, quite frequently. And then after you were done closing the attraction, which you had to do with your wet clothes and your wet shoes, then you'd have to walk out through Main Street to go get a new costume. And inevitably, because the park was still Main Street was still open because of guest shopping, you would actually be walking through Main Street with a bunch of guests, trailing a big, huge water trail from your shoes, and they were all full of water.
I never fell in on Splash, but that boat hook is a really tricky thing because I worked on motorboats and was trying to, maneuver a boat, and the boat hook got caught, and I did the nesty plunge. And this is the middle of the day, and I get to walk through the park sloshing wet to go to wardrobe to get my costume changed.
Yeah, the boat hooks were notorious because, if Kim, like Kim said, if it got stuck on the boat, the boat would have some momentum, and it was enough, it would actually pull you into the water, and then you would typically end up doing the nesty plunge. It was always on your back. Nobody ever fell in face first, I think, but that was exciting.
Boat storage is, rear storage is just before you come through that last turn to get into the station when your log gets up on the belt. So when they pull down the little wall mechanically, the log doesn't automatically just float in there. You have to pull it with this hook because the current is trying to pull the log to go into the station, not into storage. And so from the position you're standing at to move the thing from the storage grate, it's like an iron grate back there, staircase, you have no leverage at all. So luckily after all my keelboat push-pull experience and being super tall, I never had any issues with that, but I know some people definitely
the average person,
flying.
It wasn't as easy for.
Went flying at least once, usually during the summer.
It was way easier to add logs, from front storage than it was to take them off from rear storage.
Yeah, totally.
And unfortunately, we'd also quite often probably call custodial to come into the storage area to clean a log that either got full of water and got all disgusting, or it was all plugged up. They have a problem where I think it was the Disneyland souvenir guide.
Yes. The guidebooks would.
So back then everybody got a Disneyland souvenir guide, and those souvenir guides would get wet during the ride, and inevitably they would end up underneath people's feet, and they basically grind them into the little non-skid pads that were on the bottom of the boats, and then eventually it would all float off to the back of the boat and prevent the drains from working in the back. And that was always an excitement because we'd have to sometimes get custodial to come out and help us clean out the boat, and we'd put it up in the hoist, which I guess they can't do anymore, but we used to put it up in the hoist and try to drain it out, because otherwise, you'd go up the lift, and if you were in that back seat, when the water all started coming to the back, it was just miserable. Your feet would just be completely soaked. So that was always an experience. I don't know if you ever had to do that, Ken, or clean out logs in storage?
Not with the hoist, but we did do, where you'd pull it off towards, right before a lift, and I'd go in there to clean up whatever it be, code V or whatever, and other attractions we got to, on Pirates we'd actually get to ride around, so that was fun, but there you'd pull it off to the side and we would take care of it. Would now your favorite thing has to be when everybody sits down in the log and you're about to dispatch, and then somebody stands up, right?
Sometimes they would do a little popcorn thing where two people would decide they wanted to trade places or whatever. But I think there was a point of no return where people, once that thing even started to move,
you were thrown back.
You were thrown back in your seat. Yeah, there was some little bit of G's associated with that.
Yeah, it had some pretty decent acceleration off that belt.
Yeah.
Once you hit dispatch, and then you didn't really want to hit the stop.
Yeah.
In the station, because if somebody was standing up, they would go flying.
Yeah.
If you hit the stop.
Yeah.
The stories we could tell.
The stories
right?
we could tell. Yeah.
Wow. Somebody should have you on a podcast.
Yeah.
There you go. What a brilliant idea.
Yeah. Well, cool. Thanks for coming on the show. It's a lot of fun to hear all the stories, and I'm sure, we're right. We can keep going probably another hour or more, but we'll have to have you come back another time.
Sure. Yes, definitely.
Fun.
Yeah, it was great talking to you guys.
Yeah, and
Thanks.
Taking me back to my
also enjoyed our
adolescence.
years in the park.
What was that?
I think we all really enjoyed our years in the park. We made so many friends that we've known for years and years. I know we were talking about 2 years ago, there was a 30th reunion for Splash Mountain opening crew, the people who worked the first summer on the ride, and it was a nice get together.
Yeah.
And I think they actually put it in the Disneyland line.
They did.
They did. Yeah.
Yeah, they had a little.
Oh, that's cool.
On the reunion, the 30th reunion. So.
Yep.
I'm sure we'll do a few more over time.
Wow.
Cool.
Thank you so much for coming on.
You're welcome. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was fun.
Okay, well, that concludes episode 314 of the Sweet Spot Podcast.
Well, I learned things that I never knew. That was great. Even as much as I knew about Splash Mountain, I learned things that I didn't know. That was great. That was wonderful. That's going to be one of my all-time favorite episodes. I wanted them to keep going. I could have listened for a lot more, but I know we can't. They were already so generous with their time, and we can't have 3-hour-long shows and stuff like that. So. Yeah.
No, it was fun. I was just sitting back, and a lot of times I forgot we were recording a show, and I was just so involved, just listening to the conversation that I was like, so, and that's a good thing sometimes, you don't need to always hear us babbling on. So, thank you so much for listening. Wanted to, as we have been doing more recently, we read some of the reviews we get from. This one is, and we read these from Apple Podcasts, which is the primary one that I think most people listen, and if you don't, that's fine too, but that's what I listen to, so I just read these on there. This one's titled Love This Podcast by Traceal Pad. People have these usernames, and it's really, I can't tell what it is. Tracy iPad? I don't know. So, it says, as I tap my foot and drum my fingers, waiting for my Walt Disney World Traditions class in a few weeks, you guys are helping me not only pass the time till then, but also to study for my upcoming role as a custodial guest services cast member. I know things are different now and different in Disneyland versus Walt Disney World, but I love knowing all of the history and how things have been run in the past. I'm sure some things are still the same. Anyway, you guys are witty, knowledgeable storytellers, and I can't wait to compare notes. Keep on keeping on. Keep on keeping on. Yeah.
How nice. That was a very good one. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I really appreciate that.
Hope it works out and make us proud out there.
That's right.
That's right. Keep it clean, all right? And if it's clean, polish it. So, yeah.
That's right. All right. Well, if you want to go to our website, we have all of this great things over there. We have T-shirts and links to show notes and mug. Yeah, you can order everything from TeePublic has all the different things you can order with our logo on it. So check that out. You can also
and let people know we're here. I mean, so that they can suffer too. No, let them know, because this is fascinating stuff, and you want to be able to talk about these episodes with other people. So let them know that we're here.
That's right. Well, thanks a lot, and we'll talk to you next time.